and actually repeat. So I want to take the first 7 minutes of class to have you guys be broken into groups and discuss what you remembered from Tuesday's lecture so that we can come together and make sure that we have all the parts. Okay, so I shall assign you. All right. And there you go. And then, so I can either have you guys record your discussion or I can just.
Something for the.
I think that'd be good. Okay, so I'm gonna have you guys just come together.
So it's like just the noise is coming from empty space.
Yeah.
So
just talk about.
yeah, so it's starting with like the brain as well. I kind of always wondering if somebody could be really like why is it? I think for this experience, I don't think that's like that's kind of like more the literal version of the cartoons, because sometimes the cartoons are really like usually like trickle down economics. It's like you know the American citizens have much more government to what this has to do with just the core.
So yeah, so basically it was just you know, the changes that he's gonna claim to do, like, you know, yeah, build the wall and stuff like that. And then also after that we talked about how the abortion and the not the immigration,
The kicking out
yeah, and then he talked about the abortion and yeah, so basically we talked about how basically the immigration process is already done. There's things you can do to change it, but it's done. But whereas the abortion part, he basically, it's like a new deal, like he can shape however he wants, especially now that it's gonna come in.
I think it's also more towards it's more towards the immigration is more flexible because it's because the state has partial control, whereas
Yeah.
Similar with abortion, especially when it comes there's no flexibility. You can be flexible with abortion because it's how you define it. And when you be flexible with your definition of abortion, you see the review of a child, or you know, if you just yeah. I think after that, which is basically what's called basically how you went off for a while and then the PowerPoint is basically like classifies the contract. Before that, it was how Trump's making the $1 trillion infrastructure
What's in the contract?
not negative, but mutual cost control. I think before that, we were looking at equities, not equities. That's a word. It's like credit. Cost of credit for taxes, tax credits that got from New York. You know,
It was kind of neat. It's like a how he broke it down, what places it would come from. So we talked about like there's gonna be contractors, and those contractors are gonna have workers, and then the taxes behind those. So he has it pretty well planned out in that idea. But back to the whole immigration and the federalism thing, that each state decides. That's why he was saying how California most likely the immigration process that he wants, the changes he wants to do, is not going to affect us. I was reading an article actually, and it was from the Los Angeles Times, how the Los Angeles Police Department said that they are not going to obey, basically, they're not going to go do what the immigration policies of Trump wants them to do. So that's, I think that was just like, oh, we're just talking about that in class. And I find it very interesting how, they don't want it, they're not going to do it, and that just shows the power of California.
That process.
And it's also really cool how, Los Angeles is such a huge, powerful city. And if a city like that is making a statement, like, we're not going to do that, then I think it's interesting how.
It's also interesting because the states that, how influenced was like capital per capita, don't follow, most of them don't follow his party.
Well, they technically know how much they contribute to the economy.
Where would have the most effect? Such a like in Georgia.
Oh, but Louisiana purchase. North Dakota, South Dakota, they'll want to get rid of them. They'll want to be fortunate.
Even the South is that's the way you kind of have to be dangerous. That's another thing that everyone's talking about. The people should go because it's not about there's actual things to be afraid of. There's just ridiculous things that people are saying over 15 conspiracies and stuff like that. Especially California. So, yeah, I'd stay here on a green card if you use. So what about it? You're still working.
All right, let's close all these books. And so they'll be here in 60 seconds. Yeah, yeah, I want to talk about I want to see what you think of that action and everything.
I was going to do it for the but I guess it wasn't.
Yeah. And also, I think that's something that he wanted to talk about too. Okay. Especially because he just talked about immigration.
Yeah, that's what I was like,
oh.
So, that's why I found it really interesting to like find.
All right, guys. So, what was the political cartoon that he showed in class?
The political cartoon was about Trump holding like a bottle of Drano, like heading towards Washington, D.C.
And what is he doing there?
And it's basically stating how he's gonna, like, when he gets to Washington, D.C., like when he's president, he's gonna like try to redo everything that the Democrats did and like try to do his like own new thing.
Yeah, because he said that he wanted to clean out the swamp of the administration and stuff like that, and so he's gonna clear it all out with Drano. And was that specific to just the Democrats, or was that to both parties?
He said both parties, but mainly the Democrats. But yeah, because he wants to like do his own new thing. He doesn't like want to do what they've done in the past because he thinks it's like all messed up.
Mm-hmm. So. And then I have a question. Have any of you guys been paying attention to the people that he's selected for appointments and everything?
Not really. Don't talk about that as much as they just talk about the candidates. So
yeah. So recently he appointed somebody whose last name is Priebus, and he was actually the head of the Republican National Committee. And so somebody who's the head of the National Committee, do you think that they're going to be anti-establishment or establishment?
I would say establishment.
And why do you think it's establishment day?
Because he's coming from a Republican standpoint, Republican standpoint to begin with, and he's coming from a committee. So committees generally, they like establishment, they like change. And so Trump appointing him is basically saying, like, help me change.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Because I personally think that because he's choosing somebody who's from like the national committee and everything for the Republican Party, that he's kind of going back on what he's saying by choosing somebody who's in the system. And like, is he going to listen to her, or is he going to do the change that you were talking about? Is he going to really actually clear out the swamp? That seems like he slept in an alligator.
I think what was saying beforehand about the kind of already formed the Republican Party more or less, because a lot of them old guard Republican Party kind of gave up after the electoral changes. I'm not sure that's anymore because yeah, those are the problems.
That's one of your quiz questions.
Yeah. So I guess Neil was more or less correct in this, that you further focus on the Republican Party because we come right now designing something new.
But I also think that Betty has a good point of like, you know, if you want to actually do change, choose somebody who's part of the system because they'll know the rules and how to change it out. So, yeah, it's interesting decisions by our president-elect.
Well, and also good. I mean, I think that's a good strategy as well, because if Hillary would have won, like it would have been kind of okay in a way to kind of pick like someone who's been in the system but not very long, or someone who's in the system but is not high in position and doesn't have that much experience, because she has experience. So it will be the definition of her at the end. Whereas Donald Trump has no experience whatsoever, you know, he just won the presidential election. Having his right hand to be like, you know what he's doing, he's been a system, it's gonna help him out. Or she'll make him the president.
Yeah. Well, editorial note, I'd rather have Trump be president than Pence. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Yeah. And so after we talked about the political cartoon, we moved on to immigration and abortion, I believe. Can somebody speak on what the immigration case was?
We talked about how, like, Trump said he was specifically going to focus on, like, I guess, deporting, like, the criminalists, such as, like, rapists, the killers, that sort of thing. And it was more likely for him to do that in the South than over here in the North, such as, like, California. That's what I remember.
Yeah. Then does anybody want to elaborate on that?
He also mentioned how, like, the police that are in the state will most likely not comply with what Trump wants because they're working for the state, not for the Fed. So if he actually wanted to implement, like, this harsh deporting rules or whatever, he would have to call out, like, the Fed to help out with that. And that's most likely not going to happen.
And actually, Betty just read an article that has to do with that.
Yeah, I read an article on Los Angeles Times that the LA police already said that they're not going to do what Trump wants to do with the refund. And I just found it interesting that, you know, we were just talking about that. And I found, you know, it just shows that, you know, it makes a statement how like a big city like Los Angeles and a big city police department like the Los Angeles police, they're basically saying like no to this. It makes a huge I think it makes it makes a huge statement.
Yeah, that's a big political statement that they're making by saying, we're not going to follow this executive order.
And they have the right to because they're under the state. They're working for the state.
Mm-hmm. And so, as Trainer said, we're going to be seeing kind of more of a rise in dual federalism, possibly under Trump's presidency, if people under the state level are already saying that they're not going to listen to the central level. What do you guys think about that? Do you have any thoughts, or do you kind of just like, oh, okay, this is the next step that we're going?
I think that's just going to make more tension arise, especially when it's like someone like the police department. That's pretty important. I don't know.
Yeah, and in a way, I think it's going to help them because, well, depending actually, I'll take that back because you know how the whole police brutality and stuff that's happening right now. In a way, I think if like police departments stand up for this immigration thing and they say no, we're not going to do it in areas that have been part of maybe this whole police brutality and they've done a mistake or they've done something wrong or they've they're arrested someone wrong for their stereotypes, because that's what we see in the media. I think in a way it will help the nation a little bit, but then it makes me kind of wonder because it's like it's always gonna make me wonder like what is Trump gonna think about this? Like what the hell else can we do? Like, well, if these people kind of makes me a little bit nervous because what is he gonna do? What is he gonna do to try to get his way? And because I think in a way he kind of has that power, but it's gonna have to be in a way brutal.
Yeah, because if the PDs are saying that they won't comply with federal law, then he'll have to bring in the Fed and the National Guard to actually enforce what he wants. And we've only really seen that in one case since since the Civil War. And it actually happened, I would say this is a positive use of the National Guard, and that was when desegregation happened. And I think it was Johnson, and he had to send in the National Guard to escort people of color into schools so that they could attend without being harassed or beaten by the protesters. And because the state was not helping, this happened in Alabama, and they were very anti-segregation. Well, they were very pro-segregation. And so they're like, oh, we're not going to listen to the federal government. We're a state and stuff like that. And so he sent in the National Guard. And, so that was just one case of it happening. And so, but it's interesting because it was to protect a few people and everything. So we might see something different with the immigration case where it is kind of seen as a negative light, especially in most of public opinion. So definitely will be interesting to say the least. But yeah. And so because he said that, the police may not listen and everything, that Trump's immigration policies may not be as effective as he would like. But then he went on to talk about abortion and Pence. And what did he say about that?
They said that they wanted to overturn Roe versus Wade.
And did the professor think that was likely to happen? or not?
I thought he said it was going to happen, but no, he said it wasn't gonna most likely not gonna happen, but if it did happen, it wouldn't really affect California.
And why is that?
Because we're mainly Democratic state, and so we'd probably make up our own laws to try to counterbalance it. I don't know. I forgot.
Oh, well, compared to the example that we just had.
Didn't he say that the state supported Planned Parenthood? Like it funded it or something? Does that?
Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure currently California is what funds Planned Parenthood. And so it would be up to the California state legislature to decide whether they want to budget money for them or not, rather than the federal level.
That's not pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was the one that asked them what would happen. I asked them if, Trump wants to shut. He says he wants to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then basically California take over. And he's like, well, yeah, because it's already taken over by California. Okay.
And then I know we went into talking about subsidies that cities give to certain companies. Does anybody remember any examples of that?
New York City was I think one was in Central Park, one was for Wall Street.
That was the Trump Tower.
When he just opened.
Yeah.
It was like something 2 months. But they were also talking about the reason why we don't do it. Professor Friedman was talking about the reason why we don't give all these subsidies is because they want the return, or they want, or they expect the return on this. And this is just a kickstart. If you have like a $7 subsidy and money to pay for.
And this also happened with that superstore. Do you guys remember the name of it?
Cabela's.
Mm-hmm. And can you explain why Texas gave money to Cabela's rather than the mom and pop outdoor shop?
Because Cabela's said that they were gonna be the biggest tourist attraction, bigger than the Alamo, they said. And so they said they wanted more money, and just because it was going to be a big tourist attraction, and that they would create more jobs for the state and people in the state.
Yeah. And so what do you guys think of these subsidies and stuff like that? Do you think that they're good and they bring business to areas, or do you think they're negative, or do you think they're kind of a mix of the two?
A mix of the two. Because also the readings had examples of
Toyota?
Yeah, and Mercedes. Yeah, and how Toyota actually went out of the United States and settled down in Orlando,
Canada.
In Ontario, there we go, in Canada. And that was just because the whole healthcare was free and benefits like that. So I think some negative effects were being an example of Mercedes, because it was they were exempted 20 years. No, was it 20 years? 20 or 10 years of taxes. They weren't going to have to pay that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, me as I'm reading that, I was like, you're gonna be kidding me, 20 years, and it affected the economy because people were paying their taxes, and yeah, it gave a whole bunch of jobs, but they're still exempted for 20 years. That's a lot of money that could have been going into the state.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's good situations and bad situations.
I think you guys started talking about points. This is going to lower the corporation taxes. Corporation tax from 35% down to 10% is not lower. Then we do the tax credit. I don't see another thing about they're trying to implement the subsidies for just city on the national level, which is, you don't know what's going to happen, but the $1 trillion has to start from somewhere. So just having sponsors going and having sponsors place the money first gives it a time to have some kind of money that's liquid. Because if you have everything in the right banks, it's start. But then you don't know if there's a return.
Yeah, because like in a Toyota's case, no, not Toyota, Mercedes case, they promised like, I think it was like 2,000 jobs, and then they came back and they were actually able to employ like double. They were actually able to employ way more than they had said. So in that aspect, it benefited the people. But then they just kept on emphasizing the fact that they didn't have to pay taxes for 20 years. Where when Toyota decided to settle down in Ontario, Canada, I think that was a good example of when it was successful, because not only did the whole benefits of Canada with the health insurance, not only did that benefit the company, but then they really didn't hurt the economy of Canada. Instead, they did what they promised and they gave jobs.
You guys think about the private financing, federal creations, because most of the time it's funded by the taxpayer, and it's not private, it's public funds, but now it's funded by private sponsorships. So what do you guys kind of think about that? Because this is a relationship with both you guys. Like funding for federal projects, private citizens, instead of being funded by public funds.
So basically, a couple of people pay for something rather than a lot of people, and they choose to spend that money rather than just paying your normal dues, your taxes, and then receiving a service because of that. What do you guys think of this?
Anybody else want to say something? No, I'll go.
What? Oh, are we still talking about like the yeah, we're still talking about okay. Okay, so I think I kind of like don't agree with it because it mainly comes like all the money basically comes from taxpayers and like small businesses, mainly citizens and small businesses, and they're basically giving all the money to these corporations, which make a lot more money than like all the taxpayers do. So I don't think it's really fair. And then like the thing, and like how they can get like 25 to like 30 years off their off their property taxes. I don't think that's fair because that's a lot of money like worth of property taxes. I think like at the most it should be like probably 2 years, because then like after 2 years like a corporation could like be like pretty big, already. And then like with Trump, like he saved what, like 885 million, I think it was. And he already and then it had, I don't remember all the how much money he was making off all all his businesses, but it was like a lot of money, and I don't think he needed that much money to to save that much money. So I don't really agree with it.
Yeah. And what if somebody brings up the argument that having a few private citizens fund something would be more efficient, and you'd get, let's say, the roads redone faster by going through this route? Do you have an argument against that, or what do you think? This is open to everybody.
I'll let someone else talk.
Well, I think in a way, it's for the person that's investing, it benefits them because
Of being taxes.
yeah, they'll have taxes. And while putting the money into a company, I mean, the company is making off of it. Why not? I mean, in a way, it benefits both parties. But yeah, I agree with Camila with the part about them being exempted. They shouldn't be exempt from that much of the time. So I agree with the whole idea of investing money and privately investing money into projects because, for example, I grew up in an agricultural town, and farmers, they invested money into fixing our roads, and they made this building that was called the Arbuckle Parks and Rec that basically hosted youth basketball, soccer, stuff like that. It made it basically a recreation center for the community. And we were able to use that as a tax write-off. In a way, I would say I would think of my town as a company benefiting from a private investor. But the only thing in that way, I think that's okay because there was nothing that had to do with the exemption of taxes. Because the farmers benefited from investing in the roads or investing in a recreational center, and the town benefited because they got
Lovely.
So it's kind of depending the dollar this money working, so they get everything. Not just in the Trump sector, the tax write-offs, what they really want is a return on the money that they put in. Because and the good thing about that is that gives you far more transparency to say going through some of the middleman. Because when it comes to bureaucracy, especially you would have to at the federal level and then you go through the state level and then especially I think for you would have to go through small county level as well with small levels. When we're going through this many greens, it's kind of like a filter, right? So you just move away and you can with very little. And you have a private investor, there's less middleman than Professor Freeman talked about too, the cost plus and contractors they don't really have to fight each other anymore. Just don't. So really balance it out more to where there's less draining of public funds. Which that's hearsay because it hasn't happened. They still have corruption. It's all related to everything's related to.
No, yeah, and then he has a point because Professor Friedman pointed out how these companies would contract contractors, and then those contractors would bring their workers. And in that way, it helps them out because, like Trainer was saying, they don't have to go through, for example, different companies because they're basically coming from the same company. Because say if they were to contract a contractor, but then that company needs to find workers, it has to go through different pathways. And so basically getting from one line, so one kind of contractor, it would be much easier. They don't have to go through so much.
Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, by not having them bid to get a project and stuff like that, then you have a more accurate quote for how much it's going to cost, rather than companies competing to give the lowest quote so that they can get the project and do it themselves. Yeah. And so I know Camille asked about TIFs, and that stands for tax incremental financing. Do you guys remember reading about that?
Yeah, it was like in Article 3 or something like that of last week. It says the taxes are frozen for 20 to 30 years.
Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly what we were just talking about. The freezing of taxes and being exempted for 20 years. I just wanted to link the actual terminology to the concept and show you why the government may use it. Excuse me. So yeah, and I think after that we went on to the insights to talk about the iron triangle. I want to make sure, do you guys feel comfortable with that concept? Nope.
No, not really.
Okay, so let's go over it again then. I know, Trainer, that you don't want to go over it, but okay, so stop staying in the room. So, can you give me maybe some questions that you have about the iron triangle to maybe so that I can explain it better?
Is it just like 3 different participants working together?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that it just has a
3.
confusing name. What was that?
It doesn't necessarily have to be just 3.
Okay.
It can be 2, and I mean, I could imagine there could be 4 if there's like multiple interest groups, but that's essentially it.
Okay.
And so it's like the way that you could have just 2 participants is that you have just the interest group and the legislator, or the interest group and the bureaucracy. Because remember, it's interest groups, bureaucracy, and legislature. And legislators are members of the House of Representatives and senators. And for us in California, they would be the assembly people. And so those are the people, that's one section of people that can be influenced. The other section is the bureaucrats, people that don't hold a public office but help run the country. You know, people that like run a department and help administrate their needs and stuff like that. And they could probably help with budgets as well. So these are essentially the people under the legislatures, but not necessarily, because bureaucracy is any sort of kind of business, essentially, in government. And so, because of their place in the process, they have a lot of influence on day-to-day things and the actual implementation of certain things. So they can be influenced by an interest group to try to budget themselves or act in a certain way for their department. And the interest groups can also influence the legislators by offering them something or cutting deals. Yeah. Does that make sense? Also, the interest group is, let's say, the company. They can offer, be like, hey, you know, if you side with us, then we'll get you all these good jobs and stuff like that, and your constituents will like that. So help us help you. And that's kind of the situation between all three. I would say all three. of these actors because they're all trying to get something. And that's their way. And so they're using each other to get to where they need to be. And that's why the triangle persists, even though we know that it has negative effects by creating an entrenched establishment that is prone to corruption. So, does that kind of help clarify it? Yeah, see some nodding heads and stuff like that. Elizabeth and Marnus, you're good? Okay. You're not just nodding your head because I said your name. Okay. Well, we have about 6 minutes left. So do you guys have any questions for me that you would like to be answered before the lecture tomorrow?
I have a question, but it's like about my inside. So,
is it like specific to your topic?
yeah.
Okay. How about you just stick around while people leave?
Okay.
But yeah, if you guys don't have any other questions and you feel like we have covered everything, I will let you go. You're all good? All right. I will. You are free and can leave.